Everybody, welcome back to my channel. This is going to be part 9 of the story, and this is day 41, and this is also my husband's birthday. We met at the police station in Rivas at 8 a.m. that morning, and it was myself, both my in-laws, my neighbor Brian, and Michelle the lawyer. And Greg and Hannah had said they wanted to come as well, however they weren't there yet. This is one of the few times where the meeting actually started on time and we didn't have to wait for an extended period of time. So right away at 8 a.m. we were all in there, and my lawyer Michelle did most of the talking, and she was just explaining my husband's case and what was going on, and the fact that we had tried mediation several times and that we kept being blocked despite having gone to Managua and getting permission. And she was just basically asking if there's anything that this person could do. This person was also explaining that my husband's case was quite a bit different than Greg's case, because of course my lawyer was referencing the fact that Greg had gotten out the day before, and he was explaining that, you know, this is going to be a different process because of course there's a death involved. So whatever went on with Greg was not going to be the same for my husband, but that he did want to help. And in the end, he suggested that we complete mediation privately. So not actually wait on the ministry and this office to basically oversee it. He said that if we could get the mediation done privately with a notary, that he would be able to help us from there. I'm being vague about the person I'm speaking about intentionally for a variety of reasons, but also because this person ended up doing a bunch of favors for us in the end, as you'll see, and really did try and help us. And I just don't want to put anybody's job basically in jeopardy. I remember leaving the police station feeling really hopeful at this point and feeling like this might actually work, that he's telling us just to go ahead and get it done right away, and that he would take it and do what he had to do with it to get it to the right people. So I was feeling really, really hopeful. And the lawyer Michelle wanted us to go to her office, which was also in Rivas. When I had woke up that morning, I assumed that we were just going to go to the meeting at 8 a.m. and then I would be headed back home. And at some point that morning, my plan was to go try and see my husband for his birthday. However, plans changed, and we needed to go to my lawyer's office, which also happened to be in Rivas. And I just remember it being extremely difficult. Even just getting to the police station that morning and being in the car, I was in so much pain, but I was also just so weak. Like walking was hard. I couldn't sit for very long. Her office had stairs leading up to it, and I walked up those stairs so incredibly painfully slow, and was completely winded by the time I got to the top. And she had couches like in a waiting room, and I just remember laying down on that couch. Once we were there, the first thing she did was call the lawyer of the family, because they had representation now. They had their own lawyer, and she updated them basically saying what this guy at the police station had said, and that we could go ahead and mediate on our own with a notary, and that she was going to start basically typing up the official paperwork of the mediation. At this point, Greg himself showed up at the office, and it was just crazy to see him in person and sit with him. And he was, you know, wanting to hear how it went at the police station and was telling me about my husband. And again, I was congratulating him for being out of jail and just saying, you know, like, this is your first day free, you don't need to be helping. But he wanted to help. His wife Hannah at that point was actually at the police station because she had somewhat of a rapport with the person we had just spoken to, so she was trying to get more information as well, which again just completely floored me. I'm going to keep saying that throughout this video, but the help that these two did for us was there's no words. So he was there with us while Michelle was typing up the paperwork, and I was just laying on the couch, and my in-laws were sitting there as well. So after about half an hour, I had asked my lawyer if the family had responded, because their lawyer had reached out to them letting them know that we wanted to mediate that day. And she had told me that the lawyer responded saying the family read the message but did not respond. So that was the first point where I was like, that's strange, but again, it hadn't been that much time that went by, so we just continued sitting there while she continued typing up the paperwork. Again, at this point, I knew that we had come to a number agreement, that the family wanted to mediate, and I just assumed that we would be meeting as soon as my lawyer got the paperwork done, and we'd be signing off and taking it back to the police station. However, their lawyer texts back about half an hour later, and it's another one of these memories that I don't really like reliving, but it was a text message, and it said a value number, which was about double the number that we were at. So not the super high number that was sent in that that picture that she had sent me a few weeks ago. This was double the number that we had agreed to when we were at the police station prior. So it was a very large number, and it said this number or no mediation. I don't even know what I said when she read that out. I remember the whole room being in shock. I remember my lawyer and Greg talking back and forth about how absurd this is, and I remember saying, like, I don't have that amount of money, like, what are we gonna do? Like, what happens now? Why are they doing this? I thought we had come to a number. Basically just freaking out. I remember Greg and my neighbor Brian kind of talking off to the side, and at one point they turned to my lawyer and they said, we need to go see the family. We need to go to their house because this is not okay. She does not have this much money, and we need to talk to them in person to get this done. And I remember being completely scared and completely shocked, and not knowing if it was the right thing to do, because keep in mind, I haven't talked about this a whole ton, but the fear of them not wanting to mediate was always there. So I know I've seen comments in other videos about, you know, the family wanting more money and just different things that I don't really want to get into, but I want to remind you that in that moment, all I cared about was getting my husband out, and knowing that this family held the key essentially to getting him out. If they didn't want to mediate, it was jail time, 3 to 5 years. It was one or the other. So the whole time I was not wanting to rock the boat with the family in any way, because mediation, no matter what it looked like, was still better than my husband going to jail. So in the end, it was Greg, my neighbor Brian, my father-in-law, and Hannah, who was now on her way back from the police station, who all ended up going over to the family's house. And the family's house was only, again, like 5 minutes from where we currently were. They asked that Michelle, the lawyer, stay back because, again, they didn't like lawyers. I stayed back because I was not in good shape, and my mother-in-law stayed back in the office as well. So they ended up being gone for 2 hours. And I remember those 2 hours felt like 4 hours. It felt so incredibly long because we didn't know what was happening. We didn't have any communication with them there, and we were just sitting in Michelle, the lawyer's office and waiting. I remember stressing about a few other things because, of course, I had said I was going to go visit my husband for his birthday, and I'm thinking now that I must have told the police station a few days before, or maybe the day before, last time I was there, that I wanted to see him, and I'm guessing they gave me a time of 10 a.m. because sometimes they gave me times, but I have in my notes that 10 a.m. had come and long gone, and I was very stressed because they had, I guess, told me that time, and I was worried that if I got there later, they wouldn't let me see him. But not only that, I, again, expected that I was going to the police station that morning for a meeting and heading home. And because I had just been out of the hospital, I had a whole bunch of meds that I had to take at different times of the day. And the next meds I needed was at noon, and we were approaching noon by this point, and they still weren't there. And I was just worried about the fact that I didn't have medication. And I was also just really, really ill. Like, being there was extremely difficult. I don't know why this part is so hard to talk about, but they ended up coming back 2 hours later and told us what went down at the family meeting, and there's a lot that went down. I'm not going to go into all of it, but at one point, basically, they had said that we were a very wealthy family, and we're going down this tangent, and my neighbor was like, where are you getting this information from? and they had been getting information from somebody who lives in our town, who we did figure out who it is after the fact. I don't know them personally, but they knew the family and were trying to tell them that we were a super wealthy family. And my neighbor was trying to explain to them that, like, no, we're just a regular family, and we don't have any income right now. Like, neither of us are working, and I just had to pay for a very expensive surgery, and just kind of trying to give them a better sense of, like, that the number they're asking for is just something I don't personally have. The number that we came to before, I would have to borrow money from for. And they were basically just not happy with that. They were standing firm on the number that they wanted throughout this meeting. And my neighbor ended up doing most of the talking because, of course, he speaks Spanish. My father-in-law was there as well, but my neighbor did most of the talking and just tried to explain to them, okay, well, what happens now? Like, if they can't physically pay you this amount, like, what happens next? Trying to make them think about the fact that if we don't actually mediate, it's going to go to court. It's going to take a long time. There are no judges. And then they're going to go into an investigation of the accident itself, and kind of the details surrounding that. And yeah, that it might not play out in their favor, basically. Long story short. And he was just trying to get them to see, you know, what would happen if we didn't mediate, to try and change their mind a little bit about the number that they wanted. In the end, they basically told my neighbor that they wanted the lawyers to deal with it. They wanted the lawyers to work it out. And so that's why they said goodbye and came back to the office. And when they were telling Michelle, my lawyer, this, she was like, how are we supposed to work it out? Like, me and their lawyer, like, this is a mediation. This is not something that we can work out for you. But she ended up calling their lawyer because that's, again, what they had requested. And their lawyer said exactly the same thing. Like, I'm here to support the mediation, but I can't do any of the negotiations. Like, that's between the two of you guys. At this point, my lawyer wanted to go back to the police station to tell the person we had spoken about what happened with the family, because another thing that happened in that meeting that morning that I didn't mention was she talked about numbers. And this person we were talking to was absolutely disgusted with the number that we were already at. Not the double number they wanted, the number that we were already at. He was not happy about that number, but that's the number that we had come to. So she just knew that if she told him, he would be absolutely floored. So we all got in the car. I think this was after lunch at this point, maybe 1 o'clock. Again, I keep reiterating, not doing well, but I wanted to get my husband out of jail. I wanted to do everything that I could, and we drove to the police station, and he was not there. He was on lunch, and typically lunch breaks can go for a very, very long time. So she ended up writing a note to him that basically she wanted to speak to him, and we ended up heading back to our town. We stopped at the police station in our town where my husband was to try and see him, and they made us wait, I think maybe an hour, and then eventually came out and told us that the boss wasn't there, so we couldn't see my husband, but to come back again in an hour. So I was really grateful that it wasn't a straight up no, because again, they knew it was his birthday as well, and they told me to come back in an hour. So I went home, I got my medication, I laid down for a bit, and then I went back to the police station. I remember them bringing him out, and they were taking us to the lobby where we were going to sit, but again, I couldn't sit at this point. So I begged them if we could go back in that room that had air conditioning, where I had ended up laying down on him during the last visitation, and they actually let me. And this was probably the best visitation that I had with him in the entire 70 days that he ended up being in jail. They let us be with each other for an hour and a half, and it wasn't even visitation day. I just laid on him and told him everything that went down, and told him that I really thought that he would be getting out today. Like, I thought that we were going to complete mediation today based on what the police station had said, and you know, talked him through everything, and wished him a happy birthday, and yeah, I was just really grateful that they gave us so much time together. We also spoke again about the GoFundMe at that time, and that's when we realized that it would not be smart to post any sort of GoFundMe until after mediation was completed. So yeah, that was that day. It was an extremely hard day. That's extremely hard to talk about after the fact, but I'm just looking at my notes. The Saturday, I didn't do much. I ended up having the blood work that day because I had a follow-up appointment on Monday. And Sunday, nothing happened as well. Again, just recovering from my surgery. So Monday was day 44, and that's when I had my appointment back at the hospital. I had 2 different appointments, and the first one was at 8 a.m. So we had a taxi pick us up, myself and my mother-in-law, at 5 a.m. and we headed to Managua. I met with my colorectal surgeon first, and that appointment went well. He basically said I need to try and eat more. At this point, I was quite thin and just extremely ill and low energy, and I was talking to him more about food. I haven't really mentioned food in this video at all, but basically with an ostomy, especially right after surgery when everything is swollen, it's extremely important to be careful with your diet. So eating things that are mushy for the most part, avoiding anything with skins, avoiding anything with seeds. There's just a long list of things that could potentially cause a blockage. And I had been reading myself post-surgery about like all the things to be aware of, and blockages was one of them. And blockages really freaked me out because if your stoma gets blocked, apparently it's extremely painful. But not only that, you might have to go to the hospital to have it unblocked. And the last thing I wanted to do was have any sort of other health issue and go to the hospital. So I was just being extremely careful with my diet. And I wasn't eating a whole lot. And when I was eating, I was scared of what I was eating. So I wasn't getting a whole lot of nutrients in. And so he was talking to me more about like trying to eat more and trying to eat different foods. After that appointment, I had an appointment with my gastroenterologist as well, and that was a really good appointment as well. And again, she wanted more updates on my husband because she was so heavily connected to the story and very much in the loop, and so I was giving her some updates on that as well. And towards the end of the appointment, my bag leaked for the second time, completely out of nowhere. I was sitting in her office. Thank goodness I was in her office and not like in the taxi ride on the way there back. And again, it completely freaked me out because everything about my stoma freaked me out at this point, and I was still so new to changing a bag. And luckily she had a bathroom like in her office, and so when our appointment was over, she said we could just go in that bathroom. And my mother-in-law was in there to help me, and we did my first bag change on the fly. And again, this is a very lengthy process, especially in the beginning, just because of the stitches and everything that's involved. So anyways, we were in her bathroom for like an hour trying to get a new bag on. This is so hard to talk about because there's so many things happening at the same time, and I'm trying to wrap my brain around remembering a lot of these things too. But I think we left the hospital around 10 a.m. that morning to head back to town. And Michelle, my lawyer, my father-in-law, and Hannah and Greg had actually been at the police station that morning, speaking to the same guy they spoke to the previous Friday about what went down with the family. And I'll get into that after, but that's all I knew is that they were at the police station. And at the same time, I had been spiraling all weekend and all morning that I just wanted to get this mediation done. I wanted to know if they had had a change of heart, if we could go just a bit higher than the number I thought we agreed to. I thought maybe I could borrow some more money. I just really wanted to get it done because I knew that was what was holding us back. If we could get mediation done, then hopefully we could get my husband out of jail. And I remember messaging my lawyer on the way back from the hospital and basically asking if she'd spoken to the family and telling her that I'll be back in that area in about 3 hours. I'm ready to sign if they've had a change of heart. Can you talk to them? Can we go just a bit higher? And she had said that she had reached out but hadn't heard back. So as we got back into Rivas, which is still about 30 minutes from our hometown, we decided to stop. We stopped at a grocery store because I wanted to message my lawyer again and just find out if she was successful, and she wasn't responding at this point. So that's when we ended up texting with my father-in-law, and we found out that they had just come out of the meeting at the police station, and my father-in-law and Greg and Hannah said, just wait there at the grocery store and we'll meet you there. When they arrived, I was speaking to Greg mostly at this point, and I was letting him know that I was trying to get a hold of our lawyer, and that I wanted to know if we could just go a bit higher in number, if they would agree to that. Like, I'm here, I want to sign, I don't want to drive all the way home because I'm so sick and then have to come back. Like, can we get this done today? He ended up calling her on the phone, because Greg's bilingual, and so he was speaking to her in Spanish and then relaying the information back, and it was just easier that way. So anyways, she basically said that the family was fighting at this point, like fighting amongst themselves about the number, and that now was just not a good time. They were not in a good place to mediate, and that basically nothing would be happening that day. But then after that phone call is when I learned about what happened at the police station, when they were all at the police station that morning. And my father-in-law and Greg were both explaining it to me. And basically when this person at the police station found out what the family was trying to do and how much money they were asking for, they were absolutely disgusted and furious, and basically had something in mind that they wanted to try and do. And I know I keep saying, I don't want to say these things, I don't want to say these things, and maybe at some point in the future I will, but I just don't feel comfortable right now. And the guy at the police station specifically said, do not tell a soul. So I even remember texting my friend, like, there's something big that this guy is trying to do, but he specifically said, do not tell anybody, and we were just scared to say anything about anything. And but he had another plan that he thought might work, and that might be able to get my husband out by the end of the week, and that we were not to tell anybody. And that's when I found out about that plan. Another reason I don't really want to get into the details of that plan is because, as you'll see as we move forward, that plan did not end up working out. So I don't think there's any point in really putting it out there. But at the time, it was really exciting. It was really exciting to hear that we had somebody who wanted to help us out, and really thought that this could do the trick. Day 45, 46, and 47, not much happened with his case. I knew that the family, was not in a good place to mediate, and we were just hopeful about the person at the police station and what they had said. But I do have some other side notes as well. One being my ostomy bag. So I had had several leaks by this point, and in those 3 days alone, I think I had a leak just about every 12 hours. One of the leaks was within 2 hours. And keep in mind that an ostomy bag is supposed to last, if it's the proper ostomy bag, 5 to 6 days before you need to change it. However, I was waking up in the middle of the night. I was having issues just walking around the house, laying in bed. Like, it was constantly leaking. And every time that this happened, it was like a 1 to 2 hour process to change this bag, because I was so weak, and the stitches, and it was just, again, details I don't want to get into, but this was not normal. And I remember talking to my friend who had helped me order the supplies originally, and again, she had worked at an ostomy supply clinic, so she knew a lot about ostomies, and I was just explaining to her why I think it's leaking. And in the end, we both agreed that it was probably the type of bag that I had. The type of bag that I had was a flat bag, and basically the way that my body was shaped, and especially with the swelling, that wasn't working. Almost immediately, things were leaking, and I needed what was called a convex bag to fit my body more properly, so that I didn't have these leaking issues. So anyways, I ended up ordering a whole lot more supplies off Amazon, but keep in mind that they take 2 weeks minimum to arrive. And it was at this point that I was realizing that I was going to be stuck with these bags that basically had no reassurance at all. And for the next 2 weeks that went on, everywhere that I went, I brought paper towels with me. I brought all my supplies with me, because it just leaked. It leaked without warning, and it was extremely difficult. So yeah, I ended up ordering all new supplies online, which were extremely expensive coming from Amazon, and just hope that I can make it through the next 2 weeks with what I had. Oh, the other problem was that because I was going through supplies much more quickly, I was also concerned that I was going to run out of the supplies that I had ordered, because again, they're supposed to last you 5 to 6 days, but I was going through multiple a day. So I just remember being really panicked about, am I going to run out of supplies completely before the next Amazon order arrives? It was a whole thing. This is also the point in time where I hired someone locally to do some repairs on our house, because I can't remember at what point, but at some point I had decided, and had also spoke to my husband, that we didn't want to stay here, given everything that we had been through, and also the fact that the family knew somebody in the town who was essentially spying on us and saying that we were rich, even though we weren't rich. Like just everything that had went down, and we had decided that we didn't want to stay where we were living. And so at this point, as I was ordering supplies for my ostomy, I was also ordering supplies for the house, anything that it needed to get it ready for sale condition, and I hired somebody to help do some repairs. So I think that's where I'll leave this part, and I'll be back for part 10.